Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lean Techniques and Grant Funding for Increased Profit Margins. This webinar is put on today by Fair Grant Writing and Amsaxsum. With us this afternoon, we have Igor Chigrin, Principal of Fair Grant Writing, and Henry Foppoli, a lean consultant, Principal of Amsaxsum. And without further ado, I'm going to ask Henry to take over and share his screen and share his thoughts and knowledge with us this afternoon. Henry, welcome.
Thank you, Colin. So if you can please, I think, yes, I need your permission to share my screen.
Okay.
Hang on, I think I have it here. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. All right, so a quick introduction to Lean Six Sigma. So Lean manufacturing both started as independent methodologies. Lean, as we know it today, was mostly developed by Toyota, although Henry Ford was the forerunner, the forerunner. And so the objective is eliminating those activities that consume resources but don't add value to our products or services. And by value, we understand whatever the customer is willing to pay for, because otherwise the value meaning may become very subjective. So whenever a product, you add a new feature to a product or a service, if the customer is or not willing to pay the extra cost of that new feature, that tells you if that feature adds or doesn't add value. And then the other concept is the concept of flow, and making things flow and prevent things from getting stuck in bottlenecks or working process, etc. Now, this in manufacturing could be raw material, could be products, could be working process, and in service companies, this could be people, this could be information, could be documents, etc. So then Six Sigma was mostly developed by Motorola, and the goal is basically controlling variation, and it aims also at quality, because as we will see, variation it has a cost related to it. And so the variable that we used for measuring that variation is the standard deviation. That's what we call sigma. Also, this can be used for data analysis, prediction. It could be used for correlation analysis and regression analysis. And as we see here in this slide, we can also use it for process capability, CP and CPK, which is also an indication of how good is your process and how well your process is achieving the customer demands. For instance, if you're in the manufacturing business and you have to comply with a critical dimension and they gave you a tolerance, the tolerance sets the specification limits, upper and lower. And so when you see the red marks here, means that those are defects. And of course, there are costs related to those defects. And the same thing happens in the service industry. This could be the cycle time that you take to serve a customer checking in an airport, or checking in a hotel, or in call center, and the duration of the call. So if the duration exceeds certain certain limit of time, those customers are going to be dissatisfied, and there is going to be a cost. So in the next slide, we see an indication of some of the costs that you can expect with that poor quality, and as a result, you can expect to improve those situations and obtain financial savings. So the CP and the CPK gives you an indication of the sigma score, which is a way to quantify the goodness of your process. And so as we see, the higher the sigma score, the less defects. DPMO means defects per million opportunities. And so the better the sigma score, the less the defects, and therefore the costs of fixing those defects is less. Now, most companies, they work at 3 sigma levels, 3 sigma score, and therefore 20 to 30% of their revenue is gone trying to fix those defects. So that's an indication of the savings that you can expect. Both methodologies, as I said before, were born independently, but they merged around the 90s. Both were born in manufacturing environments, but they were so successful that they quickly spread among service companies like hotel industry, tourism, banking, retail, etc. So if trying to increase value or eliminate those activities that don't add value is so important, Lean gives you also tools to identify those activities that don't add value to any process. Moving things around, like for instance, transportation, increase the cost of a product or of a service, and it doesn't add any value unless you are in the transportation business, right? But that's a special case. So what are the costs that you can, or the benefits that you can expect from a Lean implementation? So when a company is new to Lean, the savings are huge. When a company has many years after a Lean implementation, there are, of course, many opportunities, but not as much as when the company is new to it. So this is a formula that I came up with after many years of experience. And when you have a Lean implementation or a Lean Six Sigma training, for instance, a Green Belt training, there will be many projects that come up during that training, and the savings of those projects combined, divided the total company payroll in a year, that'll tell you a KPI that you can expect. In my experience, I've seen much higher than 20% for companies that are new to Lean, and about 20 to 25% for companies that are normally many years of experience with Lean. So which is, for both, is a huge opportunity in terms of financial benefits. So one of the ways of the Lean advices for companies to identify sources of waste is the process mapping. Here we see one of the many types of process mapping. This is called a swim lane. And in this particular example, we have the registration of a student when he or she is going to a university. So in this tool, you can identify redundancies because you can picture, you have a visual representation of your process. And when you don't have a visual representation of your process, you may be doing 2 or 3 times or even 4 times the same thing without even realizing it. Another great tool, and it's one of the most fundamental tools in Lean, is the 5S, that many people call workplace organization, or many people also say a place for everything and everything in its place. So this is a tool that helps you to organize your workplace and do your work more efficiently, and basically also find the tools and the information that you need to do your job much faster. One of the standard rules is that you have to find those things, those tools, those pieces of information within a minute. If it takes you longer, probably the system needs to be revised. Examples of this could be in a hotel industry, for instance, with the cleaning cards that the employees use for cleaning the rooms. One of my clients in the manufacturing industry, they had the assembly area in one corner of the plant, and then in the opposite corner, they have all the supplies, bolts, screws, washers, etc. And so they had to move a long distance to bring all these consumables. So they put them closer to the assembly area, and they saved a lot of time in transportation and motion. So here you have some examples of before and after implementing Lean in an office. Here is another office example. And here you have manufacturing examples, and you can see how clean and tidy those situations are. Another huge tool is the rapid changeover, also called the single-minute exchange of die, which is basically, well, many times is compared to what happens in a Formula One stop pit, that when the crew has to change or prepare the car for the race, to continue the race. So the same thing happens both in manufacturing and service companies. When you finish producing, say, product A, and then you have to prepare the machine to start to produce product B. Or if you're in the service company, you finish offering the service A, and then you have to prepare yourself or the computer or whatever instrument for work to prepare for product B. And so this technique, SMED is also called, or rapid changeover, helps you to shorten that gap to be more efficient. Examples of this in a service environment could be, for instance, when in the tourism industry, when a plane arrives to Destiny and it has to be prepared to the next departure. And so there is a gap of time that happens in between. And so this technique helps you to reduce that gap. And in manufacturing, say, for instance, in the tool and die industry, when you finish with one tool, with one mold, and you have to start to produce another. So many times there is a way to map that process with a spaghetti diagram and see the amount of time that the companies are wasting in motion, people moving around to grab tools and accomplish the work. And so this is very important to remember, that you don't need to spend big money in capital acquisition to significantly improve a situation of a changeover, because 80% of the improvement come from tools like 5S that are inexpensive. And then you have a 20% that it could be related to equipment, tooling, or product design. Another opportunity that Lean offers is reducing the cost of complexity. And the more complex a process is, the more inefficiencies, the more setups, the more materials, and the less chances to be inefficient and produce cost savings. And so combining those steps and combining those supplies can help you to overcome the cost of complexity. One of the case studies happened in a hospital where the doctors they had 12 different sets of trays with different tools and different consumables and supplies. And anytime they had to do a surgery, they require one of those tools depending on the doctor. So the hospital made an effort to implement Lean. These doctors got together, and from 12 trays, they reduced that to 2. And in a year period, they were able to save $25 million because they were able to increase the volumes of the consumables and reduce the number of suppliers. And so this is one example. And there are also multiple examples in the manufacturing industry. One of my clients in the mold making industry, they had one aluminum block size per mold that they did. So if they did 20 molds a year, they would have 20 sizes of aluminum blocks. And that was a huge expense in setup times, in materials, etc. So what they decided to do was to standardize the 5 blocks. And they said, well, we're going to accommodate all our molds within these 5 sizes of blocks, and we are going to manage the cooling and all the other features within these standard metrics. And the last tool is the error proofing, also in Japanese called pokayoki. There are many Japanese words in Lean because it was mostly developed by Toyota. So pokayoki is a proactive approach to overcome mistakes or defects. And so is basically saying, how can I prevent this mistake from happening? And they then take action. One of the many examples in everyday life is the USB port, and that can go one way and it cannot go another way. It's also called go, no go. Or another example is the SIM card, that you cannot place it wrong. Now, if by mistake people could place the SIM card wrong, you can imagine the cost of companies like Roger trying to put up with upset customers because they're saying my new phone is not working. And yes, it's working. It means that the SIM card was placed in the wrong position. Here, more examples. How can we prevent an employee working on an order that is not rushed, and that the other that is a priority is put aside, etc., etc. Or how can we prevent employees from shipping a box with products that is missing one of the products, where we can put a foam or the shape of that of all the components that need to be in that box, so we can make it more evident. And finally, here we have what is called the rule of 110-100 that tells you the cost of fixing fixing defects or mistakes, and how that cost increase when we don't fix it right on the spot. And so, for instance, a process that has 3 steps, if the mistake is not fixed in the first step and is carried over to the second step, that cost increases by 10, and so on and so forth. And so in a 3-step process, you can expect the cost of fixing a problem that passed undetected in the hundreds of dollars. And in 4 steps process, you can expect thousands of dollars to fix that problem. One of the examples in the service industry of this tool, pokayoki or error proofing, was in the city of Ohio. And the city of Ohio implemented Lean Six Sigma, and they had in the Department of Mental Health, they had an application form that used to be 24 pages long. And so people used to make lots of mistakes when completing those forms. So what happened was that the city would send the form back to the user saying you have to correct this or the other. And so they did a pokayoke or an error proofing analysis. And aside from improving the situation, they were able to reduce the application form from 24 pages to 10 pages. For a metal fabricator in manufacturing, could be how can we prevent our users to assemble this panel in the wrong way? So while we can punch a hole here so it can make a locating pin to go the way it should go. All right, so I finished my my portion. I'm glad that I accomplished my 20 minutes limit. So now I'll handle the mic to Igor or Colin.
Okay, thank you so much, Henry. That was very informative. And without further ado, well, a little bit of ado, if you have any questions on any of the material that's coming up, please put it in the chat, and in the question and answer period, we will begin with the questions that are in the chat. And now, with no further ado, I'm going to ask Igor to tell us about funding opportunities from the government that can be used to pay for these sorts of projects. Igor.
Absolutely. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Henry. I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get started right away. So today, given the nature of our subject, we will focus on the government funding programs, the grants being specific for lean training and implementation. There are very few of them. There's quite a few of them, sorry. And I wanted to make sure that you guys know the difference between several different programs. Just very quickly about fair grant writing. We are on a mission to help family and independently owned Canadian businesses thrive and survive by unlocking their access to the government funding. And our values and strategic approach to your funding needs, coupled with deep expertise in business and technical writing. We've been around since 2013 and are very proud to have secured millions of dollars in government funding for our clients, and we employ top-level business and technical writers that definitely increase your chances for success in the government funding application. Couple of cases that we're very proud of: $3 million in interest-free federal loan secured for an aerospace manufacturer in Vaughan, Ontario, and over $300,000 in different government grants secured for a metal fabrication plant in Kitchener, Ontario. But this is not the limit, actually. This particular company, Merit Functional Foods in Manitoba, is not our client, but what they managed to do, they managed to secure close to $100 million in a combination of government grants, government loans, tax credits, and the loans from the crown corporations. So my point is that if your business is eligible, of course, and if you have enough ambitions to develop your business, there is a good chance that you can tap into pretty much unlimited amount of government funding. So with that story as an icebreaker, I wanted to get to the nitty-gritty of the details. And I wanted to talk about Canada Job Grant, which is a primary program for skills training available coast to coast. In some provinces, the names of the program is different. For example, in Ontario and Alberta, this program is called Canada Ontario Job Grant and Canada Alberta Job Grant. In BC, it's called BC Training Grant. In some of Atlantic provinces, it's a different name. In Nova Scotia, it's WIPSI, which I can't even remember what the acronym stands for. But the point is that all of those different programs and acronyms, they work similarly coast to coast. The program provides a government grant for a third-party training. So it's a training that has to be done by an external training provider. If you are training your co-worker, you cannot qualify, it's not eligible. But if you invite a third-party lean training company to help your employees get the knowledge of the lean concepts and become more productive, in this case, this training program will qualify. And then depending on the size of your business, you get either 50% of the costs from the government, or you get even 2/3, which is about 5/6, which is about 83% of the expenses, up to a maximum of $10,000 per trainee. So it's a pretty significant contribution. And quite a lot of our clients actually use this program for lean training. So this subject is the government is very familiar with this subject and the benefits that lean training brings to the applicants. So they tend to approve lean training applications, even though they are very expensive. If you have enough size, right? If you're big enough, they may be quite expensive. But the good thing about this program is that the government doesn't dictate you what kind of training you should take and who should take the training. And by the way, all sort of electronic and remote learning options, they qualify. So you don't have to be in a physical contact with a trainer. Of course, in lean subjects, it's very good idea to actually have somebody on the plant floor. But given the situation, given the pandemic, you can also do it online. Now, let me tell you about a program that's available for manufacturers in Southern Ontario. This program is called Aim at Home, and it's provided by Yves Landry Foundation. The program is available only for manufacturers that have over 10 employees and have been in business around 3 years. If that's your case, you can get you can apply for this program and get 50% of your project expenses compensated and reimbursed by the government. If you're a first-time applicant, if you apply for the same program for the second time, you get 25% of the training budget. Again, lean training definitely qualifies for this. We have many clients that use this program for lean training. The difference between the Canada Job Grant and Yves Landry is that Canada Job Grant only pays for the third-party expenses, such as the fees that your lean trainer charges. Yves Landry also pays for the wages and salaries of your employees while they are on the training. So this is something important to consider when you are choosing between two programs. Now, Yves Landry Foundation's program is currently not accepting new applications, but they do accept so-called preliminary applications. Why is it important is because you have to make sure that your applications is in the queue. When the program gets funded again, and the program typically gets funded once a year, you will be contacted by the program and you will be invited to submit the main application. But if you don't have your preliminary application in, chances are that you will not be invited. So keep that in mind. And even though the program does not formally accept applications, you are definitely welcome to do the preliminary applications. Another program, unfortunately, it's not available right away. We'll have to wait until the fall, so we have a chance to enjoy the summer. If your business is in the automotive sector, if you are an automotive parts manufacturer or you're a value-added service provider to the automotive parts manufacturing, such as coating and finishing, you may qualify for the Automotive Modernization program that's available here in Ontario. And you may, as part of eligible expenses, lean training and operational assessment to improve productivity and implement lean tools is eligible under this program, as well as the labor cost of employees on the lean that are involved in lean implementation and training. The program provides 50% of eligible expenses up to a maximum of $100,000. Unfortunately, you cannot apply in advance. You have to wait until the fall. And we don't know yet if it's September, October, or November. But it's still a good idea to get in touch with a lean training company and come up with a proposal with a scope of the training, because that's what you will need to use down the road. Other than that, other than skills training, I wanted to highlight that there are other grants for other purposes, and those purposes are here on the screen. So there are some grants for purchasing equipment, and there are some grants for hiring people, for developing your export sales, for software and hardware implementation, research and development is a big area of government funding, and business expansion, such as expansion and construction of the plant, may also be funded partially through the government grants and loans. And I'm at the end of the presentation, so there's not a lot of programs that's available, but still programs. And Canada Ontario Job Grant in Ontario and similar programs in other provinces are immediately available. So you're more than welcome to apply. And with that being said, I'm happy to open the floor for questions and answers.
Okay, thank you, Igor. That was very informative. And I just need to do one quick thing here. And here we go. All right, so with that, I see there's a question in the Q&A. All right, there's a question in the Q&A from Demo. It actually has a link in it. Question is, hi, will something like this be allowed in the training grants? Demo, I'm gonna ask you to give us just a quick moment because we're gonna have to see what's at that link. But what I'd like to do, Igor, if you could have a look at that. But what I'd like to do while Igor is looking at that is just have a question for Henry. This is my question. Henry, I come from a largely service industry career. I've always been pretty much in that vein. And I've always seen lean, even through what you said, even despite what you said, I've always seen lean as something that manufacturers, my friends who make things, that's being something that they would use. Can you give me a quick idea of what is there, how could a small consulting agency benefit from lean?
Yes, definitely. There are many processes that are, even within manufacturing, there are many processes that are non-manufacturing. For instance, sales or supply chain or accounts payable, HR. And so lean also applies to those processes. So those are the processes that also apply in the service industry. And as we put many examples during this training for both manufacturing and service. In the hotel industry, they are huge in with the lean implementation in terms of improving the hotel room services and how they set up the cleaning carts to improve that or reduce that cycle time, or the cycle time to prepare a plane when the plane arrives to destiny and prepare for the next departure, etc., etc. So in a call center setup, there are multiple examples of lean on how to reduce the cycle time to serve the customers that are calling. And so yes, definitely. And reality shows that, because the banking industry, the hotel industry, many of the examples that we said before, government, the city of Ohio was one of the examples, hospitals. So those are multiple examples on how lean moved from manufacturing to service companies.
Okay, thank you, Henry. Igor, were you able to get a look at that website?
Yes, and that's a great thing that you've sent, because there are a few nuances that I wanted to cover, and of course, with every government grant, there's always a fine print that is not obvious to people that don't deal with the government grants every day. So the short answer is yes. This type of online training is eligible. Then the beast is in details, because COGG only accept Canadian trainers. And I quickly looked at that particular website. It looks like it's an American website. If they have a Canadian, either a Canadian website, or the best case scenario is that if they had the Canadian corporation that could bill you for this training, then that could have been eligible for Canada Ontario Job Grant. However, this type of training is eligible for Yves Landry program, because Yves Landry program doesn't care if it's a Canadian training or US training or British training, whatever. So the short answer is yes, but there are some nuances. So Dima, if you can contact this Gamba Academy and check with them if they have a Canadian representative that can bill you for the training, and you can even pay for it online later. It doesn't that doesn't really matter that much. But if you can get the bill, get the invoice from the Canadian company, then you will then this training will qualify. But if it's just a US company, unfortunately, the job grant has that bias on the country.
Okay, thank you, Igor. Igor, I'm going to keep you on the floor and ask you to answer Doug's question. He asks, can you combine training and lean implementation using COJG?
The short answer is no. So there are certain guidelines within the program, again the fine print, that requires to segregate training costs from the consulting costs. So in other words, your implementation being consulting will not qualify, but the actual training will qualify. Where you are seeing the people explaining them all the nuances of lean and how they can use these techniques in their environment.
Okay, thank you. And Henry, I believe this one is going to be for you. David asks, how does lean include ISO? I have it as 50,000 or 540s and others for energy savings.
Yeah, normally doesn't cover ISO. I have people in my team that offers ISO. So we offer Lean Six Sigma training, Lean Six Sigma implementation, and one of my partners is an expert in ISO, so we covered that too.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Igor, this one is going to be for you. Mark asks, I'll just read it in full. My understanding is the COJG cannot include consulting. How would Lean Kaizen events be judged? Training or consulting? Would a Lean Kaizen event qualify for COJG?
Well, I'm afraid I'll need Henry's help for that. Henry, can you quickly describe what
the portion training can be covered by COJG. It's not going to be covered the coaching portion because that's consulting. So that could be the answer. But the other grant that Igor mentioned before that is unavailable now, but it may reopen in the fall is the OAMP, right? So that covers lean implementation. So probably there may be a way that you can combine COJG with OAMP.
Right, and that brings up an important point. There are a large number of grants out there for a lot of things, and you have to dig into the details to figure out what fits you well, because something might give you the money you want, but it might have a rule that holds you back, or it might have a rule that enables you but might not have the financial terms that you like. So, always give us at Fair Grant Writing a call. Moving on, the next question, Demo, I'll see if I can answer your question. I know Igor and Henry can see it as well, so maybe they may have a better answer. But what we can do for you, Demo, I believe I should have your email address. I can send you a list of lean consultants. Certainly, Henry is one, and we have a few others that we have various partnerships with. I could send you a list of them, or you could just reach straight out to Henry. All right, so there's that question. And the next question comes from Mark. Is an aftermarket manufacturer considered automotive? And would they qualify for the automotive program? That's OAMP, Ontario Automotive Modernization. And he gives an example. They make aftermarket truck bodies. Igor?
Yeah, this is definitely eligible. Yeah, this is firm, yes. No fine print this time, but yes, this client, this particular company will qualify.
Okay, that's certainly the kind of question, a certain kind of question and answer we like to give. All right, and you're welcome, Demo. So I've actually run out of questions in the chat. So what I'm gonna do, we still have a little bit of time. We hard end on the hour or when we absolutely run out of things to discuss. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow everyone to talk, and you can sort of have a free-for-all session where you can ask questions preferably, and I'm gonna sort of put everyone on the spot. You can ask hard questions and we can see if we can come up with good answers for you. So please feel free to hit your unmute button and ask any questions that you may have. All right, Igor, I know it's outside.
David.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
I'm just seeing, I was on a call this morning with NRCan, Natural Resources Canada. And so there's a big, I won't say it's fair granting, but it's funds for EV chargers and vehicles. You know, how do we get those? Or do you have the capabilities to help us get that? Because we have a technology that's going to improve the EV charging and allow, 6 Teslas to be in your basement, but we need funds to get to the next step. Is that something you can help us with, Igor?
Yeah, I read this announcement as well this morning, actually, David. So, I mean, in general, yes, there are some research and development grants in general and tax credits. But this particular one that they announced this morning was about building the charging stations based on existing technologies. I haven't seen any appetite within that program for anything new.
Okay.
So yeah, we might have this discussion offline to see how we can help you out with finding the funds for your technology development. But I don't think that program will work well for you.
Okay, so if we're developing something, it might better fall under IRAP or SHRED or something.
IRAP, SHRED, they're also at the later stage as the tech fund.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Look forward to speaking to you later. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Doug, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Just a quick question. Years ago, there used to be grants for what was called operational assessments, that you could actually come into the factories and assess basically where the companies are today to look for improvement opportunities. Are you aware of any grants that may be coming back, or maybe it's in the fine print in these types of grants that may still allow that?
Yeah, no, Doug, sorry, nothing on the fine print, unfortunately, and there are, rumors and pressure from CME, Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, to bring this program back again. There used to be that program. It was very well designed and very well demanded. Unfortunately, right now it's not available, but I was assured by CME executives that they are talking to the government, they're lobbying the government to release that program again. So hopefully later this year will be some good news.
Thanks, Igor.
Igor, I think one of the things, especially for our for viewers from outside of Ontario, I think it might be interesting to mention some of the changes that we've seen happening out in Alberta with the CAJG with regards to vendor training and training of owners.
Yeah, and in case if we have anyone from Alberta on the call, they made some changes in their job grant program. And in Ontario, for example, if you are the business owner, you don't qualify for COJG, even if you are on a salary. However, in Alberta, they removed that restriction, and even if you are the business owner, you can qualify. Also, there were always some issues about so-called vendor training. Here in Ontario, for example, let's say if you buy a ERP system and the ERP vendor provides you with a training, so that training wasn't qualified, wasn't eligible because it's from the same vendor. I look forward to the changes here in Ontario, and unfortunately, they haven't changed it yet here. But they did change it in Alberta, so hopefully they will. Here in Ontario, they will follow the example of Alberta. And Mark, I see your question in the Q&A. Certainly, we can talk offline. I'm going to share my email with you. I think actually, if you have it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to share my email address with you. We can set up some time to talk details about all of those different clients and projects that you have in mind.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any more questions? All right. All right. I think at this point, we may have exhausted all of the questions that we have. We do have a couple of reachbacks that we've been asked to do, and we can certainly look at those. So at this point, I think we're going to come to an end. So I'm going to, since we do have a little bit of time, I'm going to ask Henry, do you have any last words that you want to share with us?
Sure, that I'm in the GTA. My office is based in Burlington, so I can, but we also help other clients in Canada and the US. I just finished a Lean training in Mexico, so yes, and I'm bilingual in English and Spanish, so I can do the training in Spanish as well.
Okay, thank you, Henry. Igor, any last thoughts?
Stay up to date by signing up for our newsletter. If you haven't signed up yet, you can shoot me or call in an email and we'll sign you up, because this is how we keep everyone up to date with the changes in the government funding programs. And if you think your business is qualified for the government grant, you can either shoot us an email, call us, or check eligibility on our website. We have a free eligibility check form that's in the contact page of our website. And typically within a couple of days, we can get back to you about your eligibility. And Mark, certainly we can set up a quick call with you. Happy to give you a call.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Igor. And at this point, I would like to thank Igor Chigrin and Henry Foppoli for giving their presentations today. I certainly have found them rather informative, and I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your curiosity and your questions. Certainly, they've been rather stimulating. I'd just like to remind you that the recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel. I don't have the link straight off my head, but we can send that to you as soon as possible. So you can always go back and have another look. And thank you all. Have a wonderful day.